Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and today is New York Guitar Player Day. This is my second interview today with an awesome, excellent New York guitar player. We're with Grant Gordy, who plays who's really prominent in bluegrass as well as jazz, but you wouldn't think there'd be bluegrass in New York City, but we'll talk about that. He's been a major voice on the American acoustic music scene. He's one of the most highly regarded young instrumentalists of his generation. And just so you know, Brian Sutton, the 10-time winner of the Bluegrass Guitarist of the Year, referred me to Grant along with another excellent bluegrass player, Rebecca Frazier. Grant has held the guitar chair in the legendary David Grisman Quintet for 6 years, and he's also worked alongside such musical luminaries as Edgar Meyer, Steve Martin, Tony Trischka, and Darol Anger. Is that Anger? Did I pronounce that right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And he's performed all over North America and Europe, including Carnegie Hall, Montreal Jazz Festival, Jazz at Lincoln Center, and Bonnaroo. His music has been heard on NPR's Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and Tiny Desk concerts. And he's received attention from international music periodicals such as the Fretboard Journal, Acoustic Guitar Magazine, Japanese bluegrass publication Moonshiner, Just Jazz Guitar, and Flat Picking Guitar Magazine. In addition to freelancing as a soloist and collaborator in New York City, as an acoustic guitarist and on electric in the city's thriving jazz scene, Grant's current bands include Mr. Sun, which is an acoustic supergroup of sorts with Darol Anger on violin, Joe K. Walsh on mandolin, and Aidan O'Donnell on bass. That poor guy, man. Thank God he put the K in there. He'd get so much ribbing.
Yeah, it was very intentional.
Yeah. A duo. He's also involved in a duo with guitarist Ross Martin, and their debut Year of the Dog was released late in 2016, plus his own band featuring prodigious acoustic talents, Alex Hargreaves on violin and Dominick Leslie on mandolin. And he's also a really nice guy, and I had to move his appointment, and he was very, charming about it, and I really appreciate that, man. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Craig.
Hey, I notice when you're playing bluegrass, you're incorporating a lot of jazz chords into your playing. And this seems like to be the kind of the new sort of bluegrass that's we're hearing a lot. And I was curious why you thought that's becoming so popular, as if bluegrass isn't difficult enough to play.
Well, popular is relative.
True.
But, it's interesting. The concept of jazz chords is I don't know. I think it's less about like a genre or a style thing, and more about personally, I've just been interested in lots of different kinds of harmony for a long time, and man, people have so many different definitions of what constitutes bluegrass music or what constitutes jazz and all that stuff. That the waters can get real murky real quick, And so I try to just, I don't know, I'm just trying to play music, I guess.
So you're playing what feels right to you.
Yeah, somebody that's listened to a lot of different kinds of music and I have, great respect for all the great masters of bluegrass music and all the and certainly like I grew up listening to Tony Rice and Doc Watson and then later on I heard Brian Sutton when I was like a teenager, and that kind of blew my mind. So I learned a lot about that way of playing and that repertoire, and at the same time, like I heard like David Grisman's music. I heard, what they call dog music. And that was this music that really connected to that folk music scene. Like he was a bluegrass mandolin player from New Jersey. And he completely absorbed Bill Monroe's style and learned how to play every Bill Monroe line, and completely absorbed in that music, and then went on to write his own music. And it had these other kinds of changes and maybe some slightly more complex harmony or complex arrangements from some of the like instrumental bluegrass music that had come before it. And his first guitarist was this guy, Tony Rice. And I remember, listening closely to like what's Tony Rice playing on those records. And I realized like, oh, he's playing some voicings that were maybe, something beyond just like a major or minor triad or just like a dominant seventh chord, And so I kind of started checking out, oh, well, there's these other sounds, what if you have like an E minor chord, but, I hear this person like putting an F sharp note on top, it's like, oh, well, that's a sound. Like, what does that mean? Or then, so I got these little clues to, that sort of pointed towards other harmonic sounds beyond just the kind of basic like guitar grips. Like, well, here's this shape. This is like a G chord, and this is how that just really caught my ear really early on. I just became really interested in exploring like, well, what happens if you maybe add a note here or change the order of these notes or whatever, so it wasn't, and then of course, I got really interested in jazz and, started like studying that music and playing it and everything, but it was more about just like, well, what are the different ways that you can express harmony, and it's like, kind of less connected to style per se, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. One question for you. When you're talking about voicings and things like that, it implies that you had some music training underneath that. Where did you go to music school or did
No, I didn't. I didn't take lessons growing up or anything. I kind of wish I had. I feel like I would have made progress a bit quicker if I'd had some guidance, but no, I mean, I kind of, everything just came through like listening. And then as I met other people that became my community, then I could start asking questions, if I'm like hanging with a piano player and they're, it's like, oh, what was that line you played? Or maybe they'll, hey, I was checking out this recording. Like, what do you think is going on here? So I've always been really curious, and kind of like ask questions of friends, and just really, I've been really motivated all the time to kind of do the research, just because, there's so much out there, and there's so much to understand about harmony and then to express it through the guitar. It's like you're kind of limited to this really specific accent of how, of speaking music. Like the guitar has a real specific dialect, so I've just been kind of based on my own curiosity and then trying to avail myself of opportunities to hang with people. And then as I got older, I started seeking out, lessons with some folks, but that was after I was already, working and yeah.
That's pretty amazing that you're basically self-taught in, I mean, you sound like you're pretty competent with theory.
Well, there's a lot I don't know, but I think that's what drives me to, I always feel that way, and I've always felt that way and always will, I'm sure. Like, it feels like there's just so much more to understand. And like the term self-taught's a little like, I have a little bit of a hard time with that because it doesn't feel like I taught myself. Number one, like learning doesn't take place in a vacuum, right? And like I've had like inspiration around me all the time, like various people and so both through like I've learned so much just listening to records. I'm just listening to recordings. It's like opened up so much, about music, and then, like I say, like hanging with people and then going on and taking lessons later in life has definitely given me a lot. And, I still feel like, I'm still learning.
Yeah, no, I have this expression. It's smart people realize how little they know and stupid people think they know everything, So I know how you feel because I always, you're looking for the one little nugget that'll, make little hinges swing big doors open. You may find that one little thing that really changes your tone, your playing, your thoughts on a song, composition, or something.
That's right, man. In fact, one of my favorite kind of modern jazz guitar players is this guy called Lage Lund, who lives here in New York. He's from Norway originally, but he's been here for a long time. And I've taken a few lessons with him over the years. And the first one I took from him, he was talking about chord inversions, and that's a pretty like 101 music kind of concept. And
yeah, but it's like this. It's like
yeah.
it's a basic concept, but it's massive in scope.
Very deep. Yeah, it's very deep. But it's kind of it was a really good example of my very like folk music based like way of learning. Of it's all been really by ear and just kind of picking up what I can when I can. So I was in town to play. I was in New York playing at B.B. King's club in Times Square with David Grisman. Like I was on tour, working musician, and anyway, I had a day off, so I took this lesson. And this guy's talking about inversions, and like I didn't even know what it meant. I had to ask him to like explain.
Wow.
Maybe like when you take a voicing and you move it up through the scale or something. It's just like that was just a thing I had never caught.
That's very cool.
So number one, I didn't know what it was, but number two, when I became hip to that concept, like that completely changed my playing. Like, that's probably the biggest, the biggest piece of information I've gotten from any one person, which is that concept of like looking at harmony in kind of a new way. And it's like, again, it's so 101. And like if you go to school, it's probably one of the first things you learn about, I would think. But that completely changed my life, actually.
That's great, man. That's very cool. I think it's also inspirational to a lot of people listening to this that you're touring with David Grisman and you learn about inversions. It's like, wow, okay, so I could do that. Like your journey is no different than anybody else's, which is my point.
Sure.
It's really cool. When we first talked, bless you. When we first talked, you mentioned, I think you said you moved to Brooklyn from Oregon.
I moved from Colorado.
Okay.
I was in Denver. I was in Colorado for basically 10 years, essentially my entire 20s. And I was in Denver for most of that time. And that's kind of where I sort of got on my feet and started playing professionally, and it was a good place to live. It was a good way to get involved in music. There's a pretty fertile scene there, especially like not just for like bluegrass music, but also for kind of what they call like progressive bluegrass music.
Sure.
So it was a good opportunity to meet some folks that knew all the bluegrass repertoire, but also people that were interested in other kinds of music and were trying like writing new music, or maybe like, oh, let's play a Bach 2-part invention, or like let's learn this bebop tune or play this Brazilian tune. That kind of was pretty standard in that scene.
Sure.
I thought that was really helpful.
What were you? So you were playing out. I was curious. What were you doing musically there at the time? What prompted you to move to the city? That's a big. I mean, you raised in Oregon, lived in Colorado, and then you moved to Brooklyn. That's a major change, man.
It's a change. I really, by the time I moved, I'd been playing on the road for a number of years, and I'd had the opportunity to come play in New York a few times, and I'd come like to stay for a couple of days at one point, and I just realized I really liked it. It really attracted me. Just the obviously like there's such a great music scene here, and such a great art scene. You could like theoretically like wake up in the morning and decide you're going to go look at Picasso that day.
Yeah.
And go see some of the greatest musicians in the world at the Village Vanguard that night. And that I found that stuff really, really appealing. And also I was really lucky because since I had already been on the road, I knew some folks already in New York that I could kind of connect to. And because the sort of folk music scene is pretty small, and there is a really good scene here, but I was lucky because I already knew some of the people that lived here. And so, people kind of knew I was coming, and which I consider really fortunate because I definitely know people that have come here not knowing anybody, and they're just trying to get any gig they can. And also I was lucky because I was already touring. So I can still, it's like, I remember as soon as I got here, I think I went on tour after I'd been home for like 3 days or something,
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, which makes it a lot easier versus just trying to slug it out.
Yeah, you got income. It's New York City is a bad place to have no income in, man.
For sure, yeah. And also I was just, I think I was ready for a change. Like I had been in, I'd been in a relationship, and that relationship broke up, and that always or often can spur.
Yeah, for sure.
Life, but it was cool because I sort of, the relationship ended, and then I'm in this position where I thought, well, I could kind of do anything. Like, what do I want? Like, do I want to just live in Denver? Like, I never necessarily planned to arrive in Denver. I had moved to Colorado with my dad, and then Denver was kind of the closest, city I could get to. So I went there, and I had some friends there, and then I found I was there for like I say, my entire 20s, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, now I have this pretty rare opportunity to pivot, because a lot of times it's hard to just pick up and change,
Very much. Yeah. Especially if you got responsibilities, relationships, and, or kids, or they have, your jobs, routines. Yeah. That's
right. So I feel like I was really lucky because you only get so many opportunities to say, okay, I'm going to make a really big change in my life. And I just, I knew I wanted to live in this really interesting, vibrant place. And I knew that there's just like so much opportunity for growth. Like there's the career stuff too, there's career opportunity here, but I always, sometimes I feel like I should put that more on the front burner, but I always think about that kind of after the opportunity for like musical growth and musical challenge and kind of personal challenge.
I think that's all hand in hand though. It's like you have to get development out of it, even out of your career. So, I think it's smart to put yourself at the front, That
was definitely the big driver for me. I get to go, I get to be in this place where there's like amazing art happening every single day. And I also feel like I really like the pace, and I like living around lots of different kinds of people,
Yeah.
Different languages. I can walk out my front door and hear like 4 different languages.
Yeah.
Street,
that is so cool about, there's nobody's a stranger.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That's very cool. I bet your dad really missed you though when you left.
Yeah, I think so. He's not the kind to really say that outright.
Oh no. Yeah.
But yeah, we were never, during the time that I was living in Colorado, we were never more than basically an hour drive, so yeah, but it was time, like, I didn't want to stay in Denver forever.
No, you got to do what you got to do, man.
Yeah.
No, Mike, because I have 2 sons and they're younger than you, but probably not by much. And, God, I'd be like, and I am the kind of, I'd be like a mush if they left me, man, to be honest with you. Well, that's really cool, man. I give you a lot of credit. You know what I give you credit for most is for turning lemons into lemonade, because a lot of people would have sat there and said, man, I'm all messed up. I got this relationship, and you didn't do that. You probably did in the beginning, but you said, you know what? I have an opportunity here to do something in my life, to not be a victim. Let me do it. And that takes, insight, courage, and strength. So I give you a lot of credit for that, man.
Thanks, man. There's definitely plenty of feeling messed up and everything, but like, I don't know, you can't play it too safe, right?
No, and there's no reason to. Like you said, it's just you.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about what are you playing it safe for. You only got one spin around here, man.
Right, exactly.
So now that you're there, outside of the diversity, is there anything else in the art, anything in particular you like about the city? And have there been any adjustments that you had to make, like not having a car and getting used to that?
I found I was here my first few years. I was here without a car, and I found that there were a couple, like if I needed to get out of town, like, which, as I said, I do quite a lot. Like I'm never really home consistently for longer than a month at a time, before I, usually go for a gig somewhere. But I still found it pretty easy to deal with. Like the only time it was kind of a headache was just like, okay, I gotta like get up really early to get on a bus to go to Boston, and then that's kind of when I like stand on this line and but that's like pretty minor complaints. Yeah. It's like the transportation system is fairly manageable, and like so that's generally not that big of a deal. And we do have a car now, so that's okay. Kind of nice. And really the biggest hassle with that is just dealing with parking.
Oh yeah, alternate side of the street parking.
Yeah,
it's so funny. I haven't thought of that in a while.
Man, sometimes like if I'm coming home, say I have a gig in like Vermont, and I decide to drive home. So, I get home at like 3:00 in the morning, and then it's
it's 4 degrees out.
That's right. Yeah. Like every street is just jammed up, and it's like it's not easy to deal with the drive, but you kind of do it, and it's like, okay, I'm home. But then you're driving around for like another hour just to find a parking space, and that's when the despair can kind of kick in. Like, yeah,
well, you wind up parking 10 blocks away, and like, and by the time you get, you're like, oh, thank God I got this spot.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're lucky to get 10 blocks.
Right.
Anyway, but beyond that, there's the usual stuff. Like it's a little more expensive, and like it's if you want to like move to a different apartment, that's definitely a bigger hassle than it would be if you were doing it in another city, I think, and or certainly if you were doing a smaller city. But
supermarkets. Well, you're in Brooklyn, so they have proper supermarkets there.
Yeah, there are a couple, but nothing like the big, big kind of
Kroger or Publix or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, you don't get as much of that, but you kind of learn to just deal with the little changes in daily life. Like sometimes, if I need to say I'm going to make dinner, like I might have to stop at 2 different places that are apart from each other, and that you just kind of factor that in. There's, you make little adjustments. And
right.
I've never found that to be too overwhelming.
Sure. I remember when we went to the city early on with my wife, and she's like, "Where do you go shopping?" I was like, well, if you go to the outer boroughs, you're safe, but in the city, it's tough. So how'd you get connected with David Grisman and eventually into his band?
Yeah, well, it was, as I said, I was like a huge fan of his music. I found like, I kind of grew up hearing bluegrass and sort of rediscovered that stuff when I was a teenager after I'd kind of gone through, rock and roll, and kind of I was into like the Grateful Dead and that kind of stuff for a while. And at some point I just discovered that Grisman Quintet music, and especially like the early band when Tony Rice was in the band and Darol Anger was in the band. And that music, it like had all the accessible things about bluegrass music, meaning it's just people playing instruments. There's you're not trying to figure out what like effects they're using or what kind of studio tricks might I need to like navigate my way through to figure out like what that chord was, or, they're just playing the music. So it's very like, it's folk music, right? And so it's that, plus they're adding the, some other, slightly more complicated chord changes. They're improvising on kind of a more sophisticated level than if you were just, playing, a real simple fiddle tune. They're actually like playing chord changes and stuff. And so it was kind of,
big time.
That music was like this perfect entry point for me, or like this perfect bridge between, the wonderful thing about folk music is, or say bluegrass music, is it's like anybody can like play a couple chords and like sing "Sitting on Top of the World" or whatever. Not anybody, but like it's very welcoming music, and that's the best thing about it to me. Even more than like, I know it sounds funny, but even more than like the music itself, it's like the culture around the music is so wonderful because it's inviting. It's
very
like,
much.
You can go find a jam session in your town and go learn a couple chords and join the jam session. And that's like a really fantastic thing. So anyway, that was kind of the starting point, right? But then they're taking that formula, like those instruments, and then they're playing, anything from like some original tune with this like slightly complicated arrangement to, they could play bluegrass, they could play like a Django Reinhardt tune or like a Sonny Rollins or a Coltrane tune, and taking all these different things. And so it was like this perfect way in to this other kinds of like, to me, like more sophisticated, like improvising, more sophisticated harmony and more sophisticated rhythmic stuff. And then like particularly that incarnation of the band with Tony and Darol and Mike Marshall and those guys, there was like a wonderful chemistry with that group. So it's just like exciting music to listen to, like really great rhythmic drive. And that music, it kind of changed my life when I heard that stuff. And so anyway, that became, in kind of my mid-late teens, that became like just the most exciting stuff I'd ever heard. And then of course you dive into a style of music and if you're a nerd like me, you check out all the different branches that come off of it, right?
Sure.
You check out, well, who were they listening to? Like who did Tony Rice listen to? Like, oh, he listened to like Clarence White, but he also was into like Wes Montgomery and he really likes Oscar Peterson. Like, okay, who are those guys? And like, and David was really into Eric Dolphy. Like, oh man, who's that guy?
Saxophone player.
Yeah.
Alto sax player, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And you dig into all this other stuff. And so anyway, that was just like that music was kind of the fountainhead. Then of course I learned about all the other people that he kind of spawned, like there wouldn't really, as far as I'm concerned, there probably wouldn't be, Punch Brothers without David Grisman.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so it's all a long roundabout way of saying I went to go see a concert of pretty sure I'm getting the chronology right here. I went to go see duo Edgar Meyer and Mike Marshall, and of course it was brilliant. And I talked with actually, you know what? I might be thinking of a different thing. Let me rewind. I went to go see a band called Psychograss, which was still Mike Marshall and Darol Anger and David Greer and Todd Phillips and Tony Trischka. Kind of one of those super group bands.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, all my heroes. Like, I saw him at the Boulder Theater. And I was able somehow to get backstage and hang out a little bit. And I remember Mike like handed me his mandolin. He said, oh, here, check this thing out. Most amazing mandolin I'd ever seen. One of those old, Gibson Lloyd Lores. And I kind of was, I was messing around on it, just playing a little bit. And I remember Mike saying, well, you should come to this camp that we're doing. We're doing this thing called the Mandolin Symposium. And it's, you can, he might have mentioned like you can get a scholarship if you apply. So of course, because I didn't have any money, I couldn't just like sign up for this camp. So I applied for a scholarship and I was let in. And
you got the scholarship.
I got
Good for you, man.
It was in Santa Cruz, California. This must have been like 2005, I believe.
Okay.
And I was also like, I really lucked out because I have an aunt who heard that I was going, and she basically like gifted me like gas money so I could get out to California.
Oh, it's so nice.
It was amazing. Yeah. And
isn't it cool when like you look back and you see all these things that happened organically that really like drove the bus for you, man, and you're just doing the right thing.
Man, and it's always for me anyway, in my experience, it's always those little kind of turning points. It's those small things that kind of, create the narrative, it's, and that was, at least that's the way I remember it, she's like, so anyway, I was able to drive out to this camp, and the thing was, like, I'm not really much of a mandolin player, so I brought my mandolin, but I mostly left it in the car and just had my guitar with me, and I went to some of the classes that David taught. He taught like classes on I think maybe like dealing with harmony, and he taught some classes where he was teaching his tunes, and I tried to as forthrightly as I could, still being kind of a shy person, being pretty introverted. Like I tried to convey to him that, like, look, I know your tunes and stuff. Like, without like getting in his face, I was kind of trying to like show him like, look, I'm into your music, which he was into. Like, I think he really appreciates seeing young people that are excited about his music.
Yeah.
And so also David's son, Sam, was there, who's a really wonderful bassist. And I kind of became friends with Sam. And after the week was over at this camp, Sam said, hey, why don't you come up to dinner at my dad's house? And I had a couple extra days to just kick around the Bay Area after the camp. And so naturally I freaked out.
So you're like, holy shit, I'm going to David Grisman's house for dinner.
Yeah, David Grisman's house for dinner. And in fact,
wow, that's nice, man.
Like, I'm going to David's for dinner. So we got to, I was there with a friend, a fiddle player named Adam, accompanied me to this thing. And so Adam and I went to this dinner, and we basically just hung out and played tunes, and he told us some stories, and basically it was just like, we got on his radar, and so it was like a dream. I mean, it was total, it was really exciting for me to hang with him. So we did that. Of course, I had no expectation of anything in the future. Just like, it was this amazing thing. I got to hang out with my idol, and in the next couple of years, anytime he would come to town, I would go there and see the band play, and he would always invite us to sit in. So I got to, play on stage with the band. It was always so exciting. And then a couple years later, I remember I was on tour in Toronto, and I got an email from him, and it said, hey, would you be willing to sub this gig for Frank Vignola, who was in the band at the time?
Wow. And where was the gig?
The gig was in California, in Garberville, which is kind of Northern California somewhere.
That's funny.
Yeah. So of course I flipped out again, and I said yes, of course. What I didn't realize at the time was that that was actually like my audition, was that sub.
Oh.
Kind of transitioning where I was still subbing for Frank. I think I subbed for him for a couple gigs, and then eventually I joined the band officially. And then it went on for 6 years of doing that gig.
That's so cool, man. That's really good. What did you get most out of that experience?
Man, I think the thing that taught me, just the first thing that comes to mind is, like, David is a really good example of saying a lot with less.
He's an economical player.
Yes, he really is. And he's all about, just having a, like, unbelievably good tone. And it's funny, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm thinking about the way he solos, which of course there's so much more to it than just soloing, but that's, the most obvious example of that is, like, when he takes a solo, like, he can do so much more with two well-placed and incredibly, like, toneful notes than somebody else that, can shred a million notes and play all this, like, amazing stuff, but just doesn't have the same swagger, like, he's got so much gravity in his playing. It's really incredible. So that that was a huge lesson for me. Also, you know, he has a large body of work. Like, he's got a lot of tunes he's written over the years, and I really admire that. And it was even long before I met him or played with him, it really inspired me to start trying to write, but continued to leave that impression on me as a band leader too.
So you think you've written more, or the importance of writing as a development tool and a musical for music and business, you think that was impressed on you?
Definitely. Yeah.
It's funny. He did I think it was my older son, Nick. We had this tape, cassette tape, how old it is. And it was a little bedtime story that David Grisman and Jerry Garcia did. And we used to sing it together, and we'd play the tape and then we'd turn it over. God, I haven't thought of that in, oh my God, it's just, my son's 28. I haven't thought of that in probably 22 years, 23 years. Yeah, that's a long time. I just remember that. Yeah, it was called
Jenny. That's another impressive thing about David is he's a very good businessman. Like, he's been really good about he comes up with concepts really well, you know, and he's good at like finding an angle for how to pitch something as a product, you know. I appreciate that.
Oh, that's important as hell now more than ever, much more today than 25 years ago, for sure, man, in the music business. What are you doing nowadays? And thanks for sharing that. That was a really cool story, man.
Oh, yeah.
What are you doing nowadays, jazz-wise and bluegrass-wise, in and around the city? And I was curious, what kind of vibe are you getting from the audiences as far as what they're wanting to hear more of now?
That's interesting. Wow, that's a really interesting question. I very seldom think about that last part of the question.
The vibe of what people want to hear?
Yeah, because it's like, you know, I feel like I'm lucky that anybody would want to listen to me playing in the first place.
I know how you feel. I totally know how you feel.
But I'll address the first part, which is I play quite a lot of electric. I have this kind of funny like feet in different worlds thing where I feel like
that's great, by the way, man. That's wonderful. I think it's fantastic.
I play a lot of electric gigs, but it's like kind of this thing I only do when I'm at home, and so what that's ended up meaning so far is that whatever small amount of notoriety I have in the world, like whatever touring I've done, has pretty much like all been as a flat picker, like as an acoustic guitarist. And so I've almost kind of pigeonholed is too strong of a word, but relegated myself to this kind of thing of being like the jazz bluegrass flat picker.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Which is like, as I kind of said before, the label thing is sort of uncomfortable anyway, but part of that is like I just making records is expensive and it's I've been so focused, you know, mostly on just kind of working and playing gigs that I feel like I'm not as on top of like pushing myself to record as I should be. But anyway, one result of that is that there basically no like, except for some sideman stuff I've done, like I don't have any records of me playing electric, and I've noticed there's not even like video of me playing electric on YouTube. So it's kind of like this secret, like nobody actually knows that I do it.
Yeah. That's an electric in your hand right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that? That's a beautiful guitar.
This is a Hofner Jazzica guitar, which I bought, I don't know, maybe like 8 years ago. I've actually been quite happy with it. It's just got one pickup, and it's just got a real nice, like clean tone, and I'm pretty happy with it. So
really pretty guitar, and it's not massively thick. It's, you know.
That's right. Check out this profile.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's really cool. I've never seen anything like that. So the guitar, let me describe it. At the neck, it's thinner, and as it goes down to the bridge, it like swells up, sort of.
It's the opposite of tapering.
Yeah, right. That is so cool.
Yeah, it's quite comfortable to play. But so yeah, I play a lot of electric when I'm home. I do lots of electric gigs. And
what kind of music are you doing when you play electric?
Well, it's always a mixture. Although this one really exciting thing is there's this. There's kind of the group of jazz clubs here in town, and I've been doing kind of slowly trying to like get more involved in that scene. I've been playing in the house band at some of the jam sessions of this club called Fat Cat, which is exciting for me because of course that's where like my heroes play and stuff. And
where is that?
It's in the West Village.
Okay, is that a newer club?
It's been around for at least 10 or 15 years, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. There's another one. A really exciting thing that just happened was there's this club called the Bar Next Door, which is it's kind of known as like the jazz guitar place. Like I've gone to see a ton of my kind of jazz guitar heroes play there, and I just played my first gig there, leading a trio.
Awesome, man!
Like a week ago.
Congrats! That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, it was. It's funny because it's a tiny club, but it was such a personal milestone for me to get to play, lead a gig at this place that, that I've been there as a listener and as a fan so many times. It's really very exciting. So,
and that was a trio.
Bass and drums. Yeah.
Very cool. Have you ever heard of a bar in Brooklyn called Sonny's?
Yeah, sure. I know Sonny's.
I know a guy who plays there. I wonder if you know. Do you know Smokey Hormel?
Yeah.
He's an interesting guy. Great player.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I've played there a few times over the years, and it's one interesting thing that has opened up for me since I've lived here is there's this. Cat's meowing.
There she goes.
There's this group that's kind of like a progressive.
She's fine. Don't worry about your cat, man. That's totally cool.
This kind of progressive Western swing group that plays at a club called Barbez here, called the Brain Cloud. And the Brain Cloud is they do this interesting mixture of kind of like Western swing and also like early jazz and blues, and also every member of the band has their own projects and does a lot of different stuff. And so I was able to kind of get hooked into that scene, and that's kind of led me into playing with this kind of the scene of people that are coming out of like the Americana thing to some degree, but are like also really into improvising, and we'll play standards and stuff, and so there's kind of this interesting world of sort of crossover, like sort of country but sort of jazz, and
it's kind of like world music there too, is what I'm hearing a little bit.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's cool, man.
Yeah,
that's funny. I think Smokey play. I know Smokey plays there as well. It's really funny.
Sure. Yeah.
With exactly, it's a Western swing / something else band.
Maybe there's something about the nature of New York that kind of does that, where things just get kind of synthesized. I'm not sure what it is, but well,
that makes total sense, man, because there's so much of an ethnic mix there. So it's got to have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's kind of hard just to have. Is there going to be enough people to have Western swing? Maybe, but if you have Western swing and you add it with, I don't know, some jazz and some Brazilian music, man, you're going to get a lot more people showing up. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and everybody, and I think, everybody's listening to lots of different kinds of music all the time. Nobody just listens to, none of the musicians I know just listen to any one kind of music. So everybody's got a lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah, man. Well, that's good, man. It sounds like you're really getting out, and I think you probably are happy now that you're spreading your wings with electric on there. gives you a lot more opportunities, gives you a lot more satisfaction than just.
Yeah, and it feels good too to like when I did this Bar Next Door gig, it like again, like I've played a lot of jazz gigs over the years, but typically with stuff like that, you kind of just call tunes, and you play tunes that everybody agrees on and knows, and with this one, I actually like picked a set of the tunes I wanted to play and actually like really shed those tunes for a couple weeks, which it's funny how unusual it is to that I would do that, but it felt really good.
Where do you practice, man? Where do you get a chance to practice?
I just, like physically, where do I practice?
Yeah, I mean, no, with like if you're playing with your trio, like where do the three of you meet?
Oh, I see. Well, with this particular group, we just got together at the drummer's house.
Okay, so you had space there.
Spaces.
Yeah. Because it's a realistic thing in the city. I mean, it's like, where are you gonna set up amps, drums, and all that stuff? It's not
totally. And actually, that's a really convenient thing about the kind of the bluegrass scene is like it's a lot of times it's a lot easier to deal with, like gear when you're traveling, and easier to deal with rehearsals in New York because you can usually just go to somebody's apartment.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're not nearly as noisy as if you have a drum set and that kind of thing. So, but that anyway, the last thing I'll say about that gig was that it went really well, and it made me pretty inspired to finally do some recording. So I want to record that trio sometime in the near future.
Awesome, man. Well, please come back here and we'll promote it, man. We'll talk about it. Yeah, man. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear you playing electric. So you originally grew up in Oregon?
Yeah.
What was your childhood? Where in Oregon? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, well, I basically started in Portland, and my parents split up pretty early on, and there was a lot of moving back and forth, kind of between parents at different times, and it was we like moved a lot. No, like we didn't have really any money, and so it was sometimes not totally like stable,
Sure.
In different senses, and so there was a lot of bouncing around, and then at one point, like my mom moved up to Washington State, and then I was kind of living with my dad, and then my dad moved to like a different part of Oregon, and then I moved in with my mom, and there's a lot of sort of bouncing around and not really getting too comfortable in one spot.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
And then I lived up in Washington for years, kind of during high school. I ended up going to 3 different high schools.
Wow.
Graduate or anything. Which is...
I'm sorry, you just broke up. We said something about graduation, or...
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I ended up going to 3 different high schools and did not graduate.
Wow, that's tough, man. Was it just you, or you have any brothers and sisters?
I have a brother and a sister, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Older sister. But we were all... my brother he's the oldest, and he had kind of struck out on his own pretty early. So I think by the time I was maybe 12, he was kind of living like with a friend or doing something. And then so for a while, it was just kind of me and my sister, and then she kind of did her own thing. And then eventually I kind of moved back in with my dad, and then we lived in Southern Oregon, near like Ashland, Oregon for a couple years. And that's where I sort of had my final like attempt at high school, and then eventually just stopped going. And then we moved to the middle of nowhere in the mountains in New Mexico for a little while.
Wow.
We did that. And that was actually, this was all kind of during a time that typically you kind of socialize and have a community of people your age around you. And I kind of didn't have some of that, which in some ways was good, because I think it gave me some autonomy in some ways, or like some sense of, okay, I'm doing my thing,
Well, you're forced to get coping skills at a young age that you shouldn't have, but the upside of that is later on when you need them, you're pretty self-reliant.
Yeah, I think
I
I think
totally
in that
get that,
sense
man.
it was a helpful thing. And like during the time that I was living in New Mexico, I was like, sorry, as the noisy truck was going by. I started meditating, and that was really helpful. And also
How'd you get
started
turned on to that?
through my dad. Actually, my dad was he'd been practicing since before I was around, so he knew about that,
Oh, that's good.
and so that was it became a helpful thing for me to become aware of. And also like during that time, it was around age like 17, 18, I didn't really have community around me for a period of time, so I kind of had no choice but to just sit in my room and play, you know.
Yeah. So that was your community, man, that guitar.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's like I'm not bemoaning it or anything. It's just that's how it worked out for me.
Sure.
And I think it was, you know, it was helpful. And then let's see, and then I kind of like bounced around a little bit. I was sort of like living back in Oregon a little and sort of back and forth. And then eventually ended up in Colorado around age like 20, I think. And so it was all kind of complex, you know, the way it all unfolded.
Let me ask you this. I kind of had not the similar background, but I had no community when I was younger. And as I got older, I was very resistant to having community because it was very foreign to me, to having like a big circle of friends and just interactions. You don't seem like that at all. You seem like you really wanted to have that community and went out of your way to have it.
Well, the thing that I found was that like once I found my sort of music family, that really was kind of the thing, you know, and that was you know, through like hanging out at festivals, that was a big thing. Which, man, you know, I was privileged to be able to ever go to any at all, right? But like by the time I lived in Colorado, I heard about like the Rocky Grass Festival. That was a big one, you know. And
dude, and now you're playing it.
Now I'm playing it.
Man, that is a major success story.
That's a dream come true. Yeah, and like
that is a huge wow.
Man, but to get to play there with my own band is like definitely the it's pretty exciting.
Man, congratulations. I got goosebumps. That's a really cool thing, man. I'm really happy for you, man.
So yeah, events like that, or like I would go to these fiddle camps, and I would, you know, where you're basically just like immersed in this scene of just living and breathing music for a week, you know. Really, somebody, you know, some of them would be real small, like there would be maybe 12 people in somebody's living room, like so it would literally be a house camp, you know,
sure.
for a week, and you'd go and there might be a couple people there teaching tunes and everybody else is just kind of learning, and then you jam and you write music together, and like it's like this wonderful experience of community and of like I say, like deep immersion in music.
Yeah.
So when I found, you know, people to kind of connect on that level with, that was really really a deep experience for me.
So music sort of like, I don't know, be dramatic, but in a sense saved you from a standpoint of allowing you to make connections with others. That was your safe common ground where you were able to stretch that out and find it. And it sounds like you were welcoming it as well.
I mean, it's been definitely like the greatest thing for me. Like, you know, for both from the standpoint of like, you know, when I was younger, it gave me something to do where I could just like, I could always pick up my guitar and play or whatever. And then it's helped me like make a way in the world to whatever degree I'm doing that. And like I found like-minded people in the world because of that as well, you know, which is like such a blessing. And also like,
yeah, it is,
you know, like I was looking at the questions that you sent, and one of them was like something along the lines of, you know, when did you know you wanted to do this living or whatever, and man, there was never even really like I never even really made that decision, honestly. Like I never wanted to do anything else ever.
Right. I will tell you, I almost never ask that question because that's always the answer. I know what the answer is going to be. It's like asking someone, when did you know you wanted to have, dark hair, or when did you know you wanted to have blue eyes? It's like, what do you mean? That's like a ridiculous question. So I almost rarely, I rarely ask that question, funny enough.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. It feels kind of intrinsic, and, but I'm also like, as I say that, like I also want to really like remain grateful for the opportunity, even though it feels like so automatic in a sense, like, oh yeah, I do music, but I don't want to take it for granted, because it's like, it's opened my world up so much, man. Music, like I've been able to, literally see the world, and it's complete. Like if I didn't do this, I can't imagine what I would be doing with my life, or where I'd be living, or
Well, I think feeling that something is natural to you and appreciating it are really mutually exclusive issues. I don't think it's something you got to worry about. I mean, you either appreciate what you're doing or you don't. That has nothing to do with the fact that it came natural to you. I think is a separate issue. You're such a grounded dude. I mean, let me tell you too, just from my experience of seeing people in the world, people who go through what you experienced, early hardships like that, and get through and aren't assholes, you're never going to forget. You're never going to be ungrateful in your entire life. It'd be like almost impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just not how you think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to really, there's a lot to be grateful for. There's always, the other side of that coin is too, like, it's, there's always the, like, well, it brings you back to something I said earlier, which is just like the constantly being curious about music, right? I mean, another aspect of that is like, there's always so much to learn, and in like an aspect of that can also be just the self-doubt that you have about, like, am I ever, like, am I going to get somewhere, or am I,
Sure.
And that can bleed over into everything. Like, is my career doing well enough, blah, 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 all that stuff. But it's funny how those things can be really double-edged, because it can kind of cripple you sometimes, and also like really make you like move forward, like if I go like see a great, one of my heroes play guitar, and I realize, like, oh man, they're doing so much stuff or they make it make so much sense, then it's like the only thing I have to take away from that is like, I just want to practice.
Right. But you have to be, you seem pretty good with implementation. Like, for example, like you wanting to play, there are plenty of people that are in your position that want to play electric. You actually went out and played electric.
Well, I guess so. I mean, I've also
there's a big gap. I mean, a massive gap between the people who just want something and just cannot get started. It's massive, and this is not just in music. I mean, I'm coming out of the business world. It's the same thing. It's just, you got to get moving,
Yeah. Interestingly, like that takes me, like I've always owned an electric guitar. Like when I first started playing, maybe not like my very first guitar was an acoustic, but I've always I've always been interested in different kinds of music and stuff. And like I was into Led Zeppelin and stuff when I was younger, and, was into the whole rock thing. But clearly, the sort of folk music thing became my language pretty early on. But I also remember this guy named Mark Sloniker when I was living in Fort Collins, Colorado. I biked by this guy playing in a restaurant. You could see him through the window. He's playing piano, and he's playing jazz, and I had a mandolin on my back that I was just carrying around on my bicycle, and he invited me to sit in, and we played maybe played like Green Dolphin Street, or like a swing tune or something, and I was so grateful, like this great piano player, let me come play with him, and then I kind of got to know him a little bit, and he started hiring me on electric guitar to come play jazz gigs. And so
That's
this was
awesome.
like opportunity to ever, play this music. And so I would, he'd call me and I'd have a, gig to come play with him at Jay's Bistro, say like next month on the 23rd. It's like, okay, I got to learn some new tunes. I got to like do some transcribing. I like, try to get myself as prepared as I can get. And like, that's a really good example of, like, he didn't have to do that. He like, there's plenty of other much more competent jazz guitar players in Colorado
Sure.
to do his gig, but he paid it forward, and like that kind of gave me the confidence to feel like, oh, I can play jazz gigs, and I've definitely
Sure.
been on plenty of gigs where I feel like, oh man, I'm really in over my head,
No, but you can't look at things like that, because you could take that to every, and I'm saying this for my own benefit out loud too, because I need to hear this. You could take that to like, wow, my wife really should have married somebody that's, taller, or, this or that, or, that client shouldn't have hired me for do this job. There's, I mean, it depends how much you want to beat yourself up, and you just gotta, it was just, the right place, right time. Serendipity means a lot often, and he felt the good vibe. And that, I think most of the time people work with people they like in anything, do you like somebody? Do you trust? Do you know, like, and trust,
Man. And like, in that same vein, I would, like, a thing I've thought about a lot is if I ever had to give somebody advice about like, what's one of the most important things you should do, like if you want to have a career as a musician, is like try to be easy to deal with.
Yeah.
Feels like
everybody says, the one I normally hear is don't be a dick.
Yeah.
that's a, but yeah, because you could take that, like, you could say, oh, David Grisman, surely he could have found somebody better. I mean, you can just like take that down and to the point where you're like, you just never leave your house.
That's right.
So, and like I said, I have to say this for my benefit as well, well,
it's these things, like, it's a constant, just like with you can apply the same thing to music. It's like, for me, I feel like I have to relearn the same stuff over and over and over again. It's like I'm still trying to like learn like which major triads I can play, out of the diminished scale, like over a certain kind of chord to get that like sharp 11, flat 9, 13 sound. I've been working on that for years, and I'm still trying to figure it out.
But that's like if that was science, you could equate that to nuclear fission. That's not like I got to learn a C major chord, man. That's like it's reasonable that you're still thinking about that stuff. That's on the higher end of the food chain, technically there, or intellectually.
Still working on it.
Speaking of guitar playing, have you ever had like a musical breakthrough? Maybe when something that you were working on just sort of clicked and came together, and it suddenly opened doors for you?
Man, well, sort of. I say sort of because that brings three things to mind. Two are specific musical examples, and one is not. And the non-musical thing is that I've never been one to have like a singular moment of like Phoenix like transformation.
Yeah.
And I say that like that applies to a lot of things for me. Like I remember talking to a friend about acupuncture, and I remember her saying like, yeah, I felt just totally different after I had this acupuncture session. And I remember seeing the same acupuncturist and same length of session, and like this is a really good example of where like I don't feel totally
like,
different. And or whatever, like various things like that, where I never feel like I'm go through some experience and I come through and I'm just like totally changed. Like, and I know I'm being hyperbolic, but the thing I've noticed about myself is like I think I tend to make more like very small hopefully steady, like incremental progress with things. And so the two musical examples that I think about are the first being, Lage Lund talking about triad inversions and how much that was a breakthrough. And it was a thing, like, I think I used the technique not knowing what it was for some period of time, but to really dig down and start to like see it systematically and analyze what that was, like, still has continued to like be this wellspring of I don't know, like creativity and inspiration, and like it's been so fascinating for me, and it's also like changed the way I teach, to think about harmony that way, because it's completely changed like just the way I look at harmony on guitar. So that's been really huge, but it's like, again, like more like slow assimilation of a concept. Another thing that I thought about was, I know this is kind of silly, but like there's this way that John Coltrane will end phrases where he when he's soloing, where he'll almost like he'll play like a long phrase, and then he'll break the bar up kind of into an even half, and he'll do this little, like, he'll do a long phrase, and the last bar of the long phrase he'll play in the first half of the bar, and the second half, like starting on beat 3, he'll do like this specific little ending phrase where he'll be like, like that. And so this is like really specific rhythmic phrase that he'll play. And I've thought, like, man, it's such a cool, it's just a beautiful line. And it doesn't matter what the notes are, but just the way it works out rhythmically. I thought that was so great. And I'd always think like, well, when is that going to be integrated into my vocabulary? It's this line that I think about a lot, and I hear it in my head as I'm going around. But when is it actually going to manifest, in my playing? And I remember I was on a gig at Barbès, and it just came out. And it's this like this tiniest little thing, just like this little musical phrase, and it finally came out naturally as part of my vocabulary. This was just like a year ago or something.
That probably felt great though when you did it. You were probably like, yes.
That's so good. Yeah, and it's so funny because I feel like I spend so much time thinking about these like little tiny, grain of sand musical things. Just like, how does one little phrase like pivot off this note, or like how does this one little, like, how does this one note, when you move it down a half step, like how does this become this other note of this other chord?
Yeah.
I tend to think about that more. So yeah, just this little kind of rhythmic phrase, but it was like, when it finally just came out, it's like, oh man, it felt so good.
And now you turn it on and off automatically, like when at will now, right?
Sort of, yeah. But I mean, it's still like, if you're improvising, the stuff that comes out is just what's going to come out, right? And so I find like, I might find like, I feel like I understand some concept, maybe like some way of approaching a seventh chord, and that will be like in my vocabulary for a while. But then I might play for like 2 years, and that particular approach doesn't really come out for that period of time. And then I'll come back to it. I'll be like, oh yeah, there's that phrase. So I have to really try to steer myself away from this idea that like every time you play, it has to be the culmination of, like, have to like culminate in the expression of everything you've learned up
your life's work. Yeah. In each solo.
So pressure, man.
That is a lot of pressure, man. But I know you want, but it's natural. Like if you're a driven person, you just want to bring it every single time. But yeah, I get it. It's too much pressure that's not realistic. Yeah. And that's not even what people want to hear.
Yeah. And it can lead to very, what's the word? Basically, it can lead to very like non-improvised playing. If you think about like, oh, I have to work in this line that I've been practicing.
Yeah.
Like there's that wonderful quote by Charlie Parker where he says like you basically, I'm totally paraphrasing. Basically, like you work really hard, you learn everything you can, you learn all your scales and all the harmony and modes and everything. And then when you're playing, like you just forget about all that stuff and you just play.
Yeah, that makes total sense, man.
I think that's so true, man. It's like, if and I tell this to students too, like, you should really only play what you're hearing, like, and if you're just trying to like shoehorn a thing in and it's not because you're hearing it, then it's not really improvising, it's more like programming or something.
Well, that's the antithesis of improvisation in general. It's like planning and putting things. It's just like totally opposite to what improv is supposed to be. Yeah. I like that Charlie Parker expression. Never heard that.
Yeah. So that's a very small version of a breakthrough, but that's the one that can.
No, that's very cool. What's your go-to guitar right now? And then you could say acoustic or electric, and like what guitars might round out your top three?
Yeah. Well. It's interesting. I have my one electric, this Hofner that I told you about. That's been the go-to, obviously.
Wait a minute, is Hofner sponsor you?
No,
they need to. Hofner, you got a guy here who's using your jazz box, and he's a hot dude in New York City. So I encourage you to get on this.
Interestingly, they just last week I put up this video. I was actually playing this Charlie Parker tune.
Electric?
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
As I was practicing for that gig at Bar Next Door, I put up this video, and they reposted it.
Awesome.
Yeah, which I thought was cool. Like, I didn't tag them or anything. They just decided to.
Oh, that's really cool.
Which is funny because I didn't even say, like, this is me playing a Hofner guitar. Like, somehow they found it and saw it.
Got to stuff your keywords, bro.
That's right. And I got to work. But anyway, so yeah, I've got the electric and then of course, in the sort of bluegrass flat picking world, the standard thing is like a big dreadnought guitar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I played dreadnoughts basically my whole professional life up until a few years ago, and I discovered, I think mostly through, I was on a David Grisman gig, and he brought, for me to play wherever we were, it must have been in California, he brought this 1939 0018 that he had. I think it was a 39, unless it was maybe a 37. Anyway, old 0018. Or no, I'm sorry, 0028, because it was Rosewood. He brought that, and it was just like, there's something about it, man. That the 00, it just sounds and feels different. It's like more mid-rangey, and I've been kind of fighting against this thing with dreadnoughts for a long time, where at their worst, like dreadnoughts can be really, and mind you, I almost always play just into a mic as opposed to plugging in and stuff. I don't really, I try to avoid using a pickup as often as I can.
Why is that?
Most of the time. What'd you say, sir?
Why is that?
Because I think pickups sound terrible.
Okay, fair enough.
And generally, I get to play in situations where I can play into a mic. So
this is another great opportunity for someone who's got a good acoustic pickup to get a sponsor, to sponsor you while you're still available.
That's right. Yeah, prove me wrong.
That's right. That's right, man. Grant Gordy's here waiting for you if you can grab him. Anyway, so dreadnoughts to me at their worst, like, can be really like boomy on the low end, and like you get these kind of wolf tones, and then on the high end you can get this real like shrill, like almost like ice pick, like splanky sounds. And I realized like I don't want to sound like that if I can help it, and especially I think a lot of the modern dreadnoughts that are built more like expressly for like flat picking, they can kind of take on some of that just that real shrill top end thing, which is just I just don't like that much. And when I kind of discovered the 00 thing, I realized like, oh, this is more the sound I like, where it's a lot more like mid range and kind of warmth and just more, more of like more of the sound I want to hear. And so I kind of started like very tentatively keeping my eye out for 00 guitars. As a Martin's, right?
Yeah, I mean it didn't have to be a Martin, but
okay.
But I was just kind of tentatively looking, I was in Chicago a few years ago, and I was at the Chicago Music Exchange. It's a really nice store.
I've never been there, man. It's supposed to be massive. Is it huge?
It's huge, yeah. And they've got a lot of stuff too. It's very cool. Anyway, and they had a couple triple O's, and I tried a couple of them. There was one that was maybe I want to say like a 42 or something, and then another one that was definitely a 44. I remember, and they were both triple O 18, so mahogany, and I liked both of them, but I was kind of okay. Well, I should really compare. So I would go back and forth and like play this one line on the 42. Okay, what does that sound like? And then go over to the 44. Okay, what does that sound? I'm really just racing back and forth. Okay, here's this voicing. Okay, try the same voicing on the other one. And what I realized was the 44, like, it actually sounded like me. It sounded like my voice. And I kind of was expecting that was, I hear stories about that happening to people. I thought maybe that's just apocryphal, or it just wouldn't happen for me. But this 44, it was just like, it really spoke to me, or it spoke as me, it was my voice. And so I took that one home, and that's kind of become my go-to for the last 4 years, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because it's kind of taken me a little bit out of the realm of like, well, if you play bluegrass or anything related to bluegrass, like you play a dreadnought. But I found that the triple O is like just feels much more like me.
That's great.
Also, I'm not a big guy, so like reaching around a big dreadnought is kind of nice to not have to do that.
That's great, man. So you found your guitar soulmate.
Kind of feels like it. Yeah,
that's good, man.
At least for now.
Yeah, right. It might change. It's a lot easier to get out of that relationship than Hey, Desert Island Discs. In no particular order, your top three. No particular, and it can change tomorrow. So just like your knee-jerk reaction to what you'd take right now.
Oh boy!
Knowing it can be something different tomorrow and the next day.
Right. That's very tough, man. Well, Desert Island. I think one of them would definitely have to be the Debussy String Quartet. He only wrote one. It's often paired, like if it's a CD, it's often paired with the Ravel String Quartet, which I think he only wrote one as well. But particularly the Debussy is just like, man, it's just unbelievably beautiful music. It's just so good.
And it's Debussey?
No E at the end, just SSY.
Debussy. Great.
Especially the third movement, like I will just never ever get tired of listening to that music. It's so good. And just this perfect, like, just so much going on dynamically, and also like the way he moves through harmony, but it's also like really melodic music too. It's just like, just kind of everything.
I feel embarrassed now. Mine is like Dark Side of the Moon. It's just like the way you pitch that. I can't really say I can't say like Dark Side of the Moon anymore. And now I have this always in my head, the beauty and the delicacy with which you said that. I'm like,
It's just, it's different for everyone. Like, it's so hard to narrow it down to three. I mean, gosh, I know I can say that one. There's this. I'm such a like, what's the word? Fanboy. I'm such a fanboy of this guy Lage Luns. He has this record called Standards that he made years ago. That's just him playing standards. It's trio just with bass and drums. And I think it's the first record of his that I ever listened to, and so it kind of has that emotional connection.
Spell his name.
Lage is his first name. His last name is Lund.
Lage Lund. Okay.
Yeah.
Lund.
Yeah, and just the way he approaches harmony is like so beautiful, and and also I find that like just some of the playing on that record is so like he's improvising. He's really improvising melodies. You know, he's not just soloing, and I feel like that's what really appeals to me. You know?
Is that yours?
The dog?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on the street.
Oh, that's what I thought. Wow, that's pretty loud. That sounds like it's right in your place. Do you live on the first floor or the second floor or something?
Second floor.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's. I didn't think you had
a thing too, where that like sometimes a noise will be less loud on my end, but then comes through really intensely on the receiving end. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
I didn't think you had like a dog and a cat, and
not.
And you're a musician who's only home 1 month at a time, max.
That's right.
I was like, wow, that's awesome. How's he swinging that? Maybe you have like thinking maybe you have like animals that take self-sufficient or something like that. The cat pops open a can of dog food with a dog or something.
Right, the automatic feeder.
Yeah, I was like, wow, what the hell? I need to get on this. So Standards by Lage Loon, and what would be number 3?
Yeah, boy. Yeah, let me think about this.
Come on, say Dark Side of the Moon, Grant.
Okay, can I say top 4?
Yeah, man. You can say you can even get a box set in. This is your lucky special day.
Man, it's really hard, but just because I'm thinking in terms of like, well, what would I be able to just really dig into, time after time? Like another one that comes up, there's this record called Masterpieces by Ellington, which is like it's from the 50s. I don't remember what year, but it's this Duke Ellington record where he wrote these long form versions of his pieces. Like he does Mood Indigo. And
that's weird.
Standard tunes, but they're like these really incredible like arrangements that he made of his pieces, and it's just really deep.
That's really interesting to do that.
Yeah, it's a fascinating record. I think too it was like it was an opportunity for him to take advantage of like LP records for one of the first times.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
It's like actually affected by technology.
Yeah. I think Kiss did something like that. Didn't they write like some big etudes of their top? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, man, I'm pretty gullible.
No, I was just thinking like that's such a like an ambitious thing to do, to be honest with you, to rework your own tunes, and that was like I could see Frank Zappa doing something like that.
Right. Well, Ellington, man, he was such a composer, and all, like, but also like those are such standard iconic tunes. Like, man, it'd be hard to rewrite Mood Indigo.
Yeah. And what would number 4 be?
How about I'll bring it back home with the record Tone Poems by David Grisman and Tony Rice. Nice,
there you go.
It's just them playing duo. It's funny, man. What I said about David is so good at kind of coming up with concepts.
Yes.
And there's a concept with that record, which is that it's the two of them, but they're playing like a different instrument on every track, like a different, Tony plays a different guitar on every track, David plays a different mandolin on every track. And so like they play a Django tune, and Tony plays one of those Django guitars on that one, and all these different instruments. And it's really funny because I had it on, in my teenage years, I had it dubbed onto a cassette tape, so like a blank tape, right? But Tone Poems. And of course, I wore the tape out. I listened to that all the time. But one thing I did not realize at the time was that they were playing different instruments on every track, because like I was just listening to what they were playing, and I was listening to like their tone, and I was so cued in about like the way they sound, like the way their hands make the instruments sound. I never even realized that they were playing like a different instrument on every track. It never even occurred to me, which is funny because that was like the whole concept of the record, was that they were doing this thing. But to me, what shone through was just their sound and their playing.
Yeah. Right.
It was kind of funny, but it's just like, that's one of those records that's like, it's like home or something.
I'm going to check that out. Actually, I'm circling this one here in red. That means look at it. Man, what's your definition of happiness? I'm interested in this answer. Do you still meditate, by the way?
Yeah.
How long do you, if you're comfortable answering, if you're not, it's totally cool. Like, I was curious how long you meditate for every day.
It really depends. It kind of depends on what my day is like. I'm tend to be a lot better about doing it in the morning than I am in the evening. Just because a lot of times, I just usually fall asleep in the evening.
Yeah, your day is shot. It's like going to the gym in the evening. I could never do that, man.
I know it's hard, but it always feels like I got to get better at that. But typically do like anywhere between 15 minutes and 45 minutes.
That's great, man. Even 15 minutes is really good.
I've had periods where I do longer, and I've had periods where I've been like much more regular about it.
Wow, so just that's really good.
Keep with it is like that's just like with practicing guitar, making yourself kind of stick with it. Although practicing guitar I find easier to do every day just because it's just it. I don't know.
What do you do? This is a stupid question, but I got to ask. What happens when you're meditating? Do you shut your cat out of the room? Because like I know your cat's going to be walking all over you. Like, what do you do?
I try to. Well, we just got him a couple weeks ago, so he's in.
Okay. Sorry, that's everyone loves guitar. Home of the stupidest questions around. I was just like, because I was meditating one time, not for 15 minutes, and I got a slew of cats, and then one gets off me.
Question though, yeah, close the door.
Yeah, that's what I got to do. It's like throwing out kids or something. I was like, dude, leave me alone. I mean, and like my cat is sleeping now, but normally like it's the same thing. He's like climbing. She's like climbing on me. I got to put her on the floor, and I'm like, dude, listen,
Yeah. He's pretty interactive, so yeah, definitely you got to just close him out.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You gave me permission to boot my cat out. All right, it's important. Sorry. So, what's your definition of happiness?
Yeah. There's so many different kinds, right?
Yeah.
There's a kind of happiness of like, man, I've had some moments. So I have this band, Mr. Sun, this band, the great Darol Anger, another one of my personal heroes, and also I'm really lucky to call him a good friend. And my friend Joe K. Walsh, who's kind of a musical brother. And I remember that there's this one time when we were standing in Daryl's kitchen, and we were like, I think we were going to have like a dinner party or something. So we're kind of cooking and getting ready to have some people over to Daryl's house. And we were just playing tunes. And I got just like, as if like lifted off the ground, this like, just this feeling of like transportation, like just this like, I don't know, almost just like this joy, just like deep in my heart, deep inside my chest. It's like everything is just kind of like shining in the moment. It's happened 2 times with that particular group of people.
Oh man, that's like huge.
Heavy.
Yeah, that's. Yeah. Hold on, were there no drugs involved?
No drugs involved.
Oh, okay.
No,
that's pretty cool, man.
No altered consciousness of that kind. And it happened another time. We were in the Yukon, where we were playing, and we were just at somebody's house rehearsing, and it's just like, I remember it being a moment where I was just playing chords, and like Darol is playing a melody or something, and it's just this moment where it's like, it's not even about what the music sounds like. It's just like there's this deep,
that connection's got to be pretty intense, man.
Yeah,
you guys are like musical soulmates again. That word.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
So that feeling of like, I mean, that's like a spiritual thing. That's the same thing you're saying in meditation, right?
Yeah.
That's one kind of happiness. That's just like the sort of the like nectar of bliss kind of happiness.
Yeah.
That's like that special thing that only comes around, every once in a while. There's the kind of happiness where my partner, Sophia, who also lives here, but she's at work now. A moment where we might just kind of maybe be traveling together somewhere, and we just kind of look at each other, and I just feel, you know, really lucky to be able to spend time with this wonderful, you know, this wonderful soul. And like, there's the happiness of being like, you know, not too anxious about paying your bills, which is like certainly a constant state of affairs with being a musician.
Sure.
You know, so man, there's a lot of different kinds, and I know that's
a great answer, because it's honest answer. No, it's a perfect answer, man. That's I'm happy you answered it like that.
You know, yesterday, I'll say I had this rehearsal for this gig coming up tomorrow, actually. And I told it was like with a group of people that I never, like, I played with all of them individually, but we never got in that particular group together. I thought it'd be cool. Okay, well, I want to work with this the steel guitar player, like slide guitar, lap steel, and bassist, and I'm playing electric, and this other guy's playing clarinet.
Dude, I'm happy you're playing electric so much.
Thanks. Yeah, me too. Cool. I thought, okay, well, I've got this group together. I really want to write something for this group, you know, and just like whatever it is, I want to write something. And I even we had rehearsal yesterday at it was 2 p.m. and I had to go into the city for an appointment, so I was gone for like 3 hours. But I woke up, you know, I got myself up pretty early in the morning. I just sat down. I was like, okay, I gotta try to write something here. So I just pushed myself really hard to try to like write a tune yesterday before I left for this appointment. And then I got back, and it wasn't quite done, but I had enough that I could like really try to push through to the end. And I was maybe like 15 minutes late to rehearsal because I was trying to finish this tune, but I wrote a brand new tune in a morning to do for this rehearsal, and we're gonna play it on the gig tomorrow.
That's awesome.
And it's not something like great masterwork or something, but that gave me an incredible sense of accomplishment that I was able to, like my day was a success yesterday because I wrote a piece of music, you know, and that's also another, you know, very wonderful and specific kind of happiness, you know. Like,
and you're putting it to immediate implementation tomorrow night, which is a very cool thing.
Right. Yeah. You know, it's, and like I say, I mean, writing is really important for me, and I can go through like long stretches of time where I feel like nothing's really coming out. But I found again and again, like having a reason to write and having a deadline is really, really necessary for me. Maybe not necessary, but it's almost necessary.
You want to hear something funny? Do you know, I'm sure you know John Jorgensen, or you know who he is. Sure. So John, his thing is every time he gets a new guitar, he writes a song. I'm like, dude, that's an expensive songwriting. And he like, you know, some of his guitar, you know, he's not, you know, some of his guitars are regular purchases, but some of them are like, you know, custom, you know, X, you know, or a you know, a 30s Martin or something like that. And, you know, that's what his thing is every time he gets it.
Yeah. I'm going to need something a little more of an accessible.
Yeah. I was like,
prod.
yeah, it was quite funny. That's great, man. I'm really happy. And I'm sure everybody dug the song.
I think, yeah, it's okay. It was kind of like, sort of like a minor blues. Like I was trying to write almost like one of those old Duke Ellington swing tunes, like a sort of blues in G minor, but it starts with this kind of intro. And I was trying to write like two lines in harmony together for the steel guitar and the clarinet to play together. So they have this lines like or something like that. And then there's like some counterpoint that the guitar and bass kind of plays in unison. I just wanted to like make use of those voices.
That's very cool. You know what I love about talking to musicians? You guys are like I would never hum a tune to someone because it's not what I do on a regular basis, but you guys do it on a regular basis. So it's like speaking. If I ask, you know, if you're humming something, you don't feel awkward or anything, or even if you sang it, like I've interviewed guys that also sang and they'll start singing it. It's like, God bless you, man, because it's not a snowball's chance in hell I would ever do any of that, let alone on a show being listened to by thousands of people, you know. No, I'm bad enough. I got to talk is what I feel. That's great, man.
Singing turns them off Sorry.
No, it's great. No, it never does. Cause that's what I'm saying. When you're talking to a professional that does it, it's not awkward for them at all. That's what they do. That's what you do. You sing, you hum, you play music, and that's your gig. I think it's great.
I teach at a fair amount of camps, like in different parts of the country or whatever. And I've been doing, you teach tunes a lot of times, or maybe like teach a melodic phrase, and it'll be like a group of guitar players usually, and it'll be pretty much always like adults, adult learners, folks that are usually been playing for a long time. But if I'm teaching a phrase or whatever, like I'll usually try to get people to sing the phrase before they play. I'll say like, you can't touch your guitar, like you got to sing it first, because it feels like you got to get it in your ear, and that's the best way.
Yeah, for sure.
It's always it's a little surprising how uncomfortable people are with singing the phrase. It's like it's important. You got to hear it.
Well, people are often uncomfortable talking, even like you go to meetings or whatever, and it's really difficult for people to do that. Like that I do regularly, so I'm good with that, but there's no way in hell I'd sing. Oh, God. Sometimes
I really, sorry to interrupt.
No. It's cool.
I always really appreciate seeing people, if it's like middle-aged men, that come to these camps, and they might be people that are, have some kind of like high-powered professional life or whatever. And they're sort of humbling themselves to show up and sit in this class, and take guitar lessons from this, 30-something-year-old guy that they've probably never heard of.
Do me a favor.
Good character.
Define middle age, because I'm just sitting there thinking, am I even middle age anymore? When does that end?
I don't know. I'm just like,
you don't have to.
Bluegrass camps, a lot of times it's like, 60-something-year-old men.
Okay, so I'm still in middle age. God, I was just scanning. Damn, that's scary if I'm out of middle age. Wow. Thank you. I feel better, man.
It's a tenuous phrase.
It's adjustable. What's the most important thing you've learned about yourself throughout this journey, Grant?
Do you mean this conversation or life?
No, this conversation. No. I mean, throughout your journey of music, since listen, I think you've experienced a lot. I think from growing up in a very less than idyllic childhood, and I really give you credit for, you don't seem like the guy who ever had a chip on his shoulder about it or angry about it. You've done a lot, man. You've really accomplished a lot. You're a guy who has played with lots of your heroes. You've played in arenas, you headlined arenas that you used to attend as a kid. I think that's like a really cool, to me, that's a great story, man. I mean, that's a wonderful story. And I was just curious, what have you learned about yourself during this whole thing?
I've learned that I should shut my window when I'm doing interviews.
Learned that it's noisy in New York.
Boy, a lot. I mean, a thing that comes to mind. Well, for example, a thing that comes to mind now, and again, it's kind of like with the Desert Island CD thing. I mean, I could give you a different answer 25 minutes from now, but one thing that comes to mind is I think I'm really like disinclined to like ask for stuff, and there's usually like a lot more room to ask for help with things than maybe I'm inclined to think there is, if that makes sense.
Man, you have no idea how much sense that makes to me. And I'll talk to you. I finish, and then I'll talk to you about that.
I'm really slowly learning that, because I think that, it's taken me, all these years to even like cotton on to that concept at all. So, for example, just like asking for a gig at some place, it's like, I think, well, it's like, it's just hard, it's hard to do. So, but like, a lot of times, nothing's going to happen if you don't kind of put yourself out there. And I've always found that challenging, because like, I'm not in music to like further my ego or my own like agenda or something. Like, I'm in music because I am fascinated by music. Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, you also have to like, you got to work, and you got to like put yourself in the position to to like have a career and advance it to whatever degree, and also like help other people along the way. And like if you
I bet you, but you've never minded. I would imagine you've never minded helping others.
No,
yeah,
definitely
right,
not.
yeah, okay,
No,
I get
absolutely.
that.
I want to help people
Sure.
as much as possible, and but you know, if it's hard to help people if you don't have anything going on, right?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
you know, so I don't know. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard thing to distill into one specific point, I guess. But it's just, you know, the way I've been thinking about just a career lately. It's like, what is, you know, how does it all work? You know, it's yeah. I think asking for help is important, and also, and then you kind of see what that looks like, and you see how, you know, how you can like look for opportunities to help other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Man, let me tell you, it makes 100% sense, because I had nobody. This is my take for myself, and maybe it applies to you. I think when the people that are supposed to help you, meaning your parents, don't help you, and you're basically flying solo from as long as you can remember. For me, anyway, the word help just wasn't in my lexicon. It wasn't in my vocabulary. It's like I didn't know. It's almost like coming from another planet and asking for a slice of pizza. That's nothing that you know about. So I never knew that people would help you.
Yeah.
It's just never. This is just me. Now, maybe the same thing for you, but this is what definitely was for me. And then when I was like about 40, I don't know, 48, 46, something like that, I had a whole bunch of stuff go wrong at the same time. Like just bad period of, bad run in life, everybody has them. And I had to get something out of that. And the thing I got out of that is you got to ask for help. You've got to ask for help. And it was almost like I had to be humbled and broken because I needed fucking help, man. And I was just like, I couldn't figure these. There was so many different things going on at once. I didn't have the tools. I needed input from somewhere. Yeah. And that was the great lesson that taught me. And it's in the first few years, it was very difficult to ask for help. And I'm 54 now, and it's only been in the last 3 or 4 years that I'm more comfortable asking for it. And I think some of it has to do with, I'm totally honest, one is never, just again, not, the word is not something that was in my vocabulary. And I think some of it has to do with messages of like undeserving at times. But I've pretty much, I've worked through that. I spent a lot of time in counseling in my 40s trying to pretty much working through that. But just the weirdness of, of asking for help was very weird, and I'm aware of it now, so I'll do it anyway. Yeah. And but so I don't know if your reasoning is the same, but I understand 100% what you said. And if the whole point of us getting together on this call was that information I gave you is something that'll put in your head and maybe help you ask for help, I'm really glad we connected, man.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think there's some overlap there. And I think too, there's an easy sort of myth about I think it's kind of woven into American culture about being like really self-reliant and being like, the kind of I don't know, maybe it's just something about, I feel like there's something particular to or endemic to like the American perspective of just like, just being I don't know. It's like one of the downsides of individualism or something.
Yeah, but you still got to do the shit. You could get some help, but no one's doing it for you. Someone could give you a connection or point you in the right direction or say, try this, but you still got to pull the trigger. So
that's true.
I don't think that's invalidated. I think if you look at I've met so many guys in business that literally the success story went like this. Some version of, because I ran a marketing company and I've been doing that for 20 years. And I interviewed actually people. I published a newsletter for 10 years and I interviewed business guys every month. And so the story is some version of this. I was doing this and I met this guy and he turned me on to this or told me to do this or he introduced me to this guy and boom. Not overnight, like, there's no Phoenix transformation, but that led to a succession of things which ultimately changed the guy's life. Now, is he or she any less self-sufficient because somebody said, hey, try this? Hell no. But everybody that has pretty much become successful, I mean, it's impossible to do it alone. I think so. Anyway.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think,
because we can only,
it can kind of hinder the willingness to reach out to people. It's just like, I'm supposed to, like, there's a feeling I often have, like, I'm supposed to figure this out, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's just hard to ask for help, like, which is different from somebody like suggesting something like, have you tried this or have you called this guy or whatever,
Yeah. But so I again, for me, it was not identical, but it was just, I didn't know that I didn't have a problem doing it. Like I felt like I got to do it myself. I just didn't know, like, oh, people help you.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds ridiculously stupid, but I'm being honest. So be it, Right. That was my journey. So, maybe it's ridiculous, but I'm just, if like for me, I'm just always glad my kids don't have to deal with that bullshit because they didn't have, they had people helping them out. In fact, they have no problem asking for help, which in the end is a good thing,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so that's been a big one for me.
Interesting.
Gosh, I don't know. There's a lot. I mean, I guess that sort of ties in with, like, it can sound so corny if you want to be cynical about it, but like we all really like rely on each other. Like the music community is just that. It's a community.
Especially.
Yeah. And like it doesn't, like, man, it's like you think about all the music that you like to listen to. It's like, I've been thinking lately, like, people don't give enough respect to like audio engineers, because you think about, oh yeah, this great Pink Floyd record, but man, like it wouldn't sound the way it did without, whoever was engineering the record. I don't know who it was. But
it was actually Alan Parsons.
There you go.
Yeah. Funny enough.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, there's always, or even just like doing a gig, like, sure, the music that's kind of what everybody's paying attention to, but if the sound people weren't doing their job, that could make the whole experience
sure.
A lot worse or less effective or whatever. It's just like there's so much interconnectivity that it's like you can't just sit around like agape at it all day long, but it's definitely good to keep in mind.
Yeah. Great, man. You bluegrass guys are deep. I like talking. I got to get some more bluegrasses on this show, man. Between you and Rebecca and Brian, God, you guys are awesome.
That's so great that you talked to them.
What's that?
It's so great that you talked to them.
Yeah. And they were all very cool. Rebecca had a great story, man. I mean, she was awesome. Yeah. 2 more questions, man. One's real simple and the other one not so much. Favorite New York City food or foods?
Oh, boy. There's I'll tell you a few of my favorite restaurants. There's this place on the Lower East Side called Gaia that Sophia and I just stumbled into one night, and it's just wonderful. I don't know. I don't even know what to say about it.
What kind of food?
It's like Italian, but kind of home style Italian food.
Where is that? Because my wife loves Italian. I could just take her there next time we go to the city.
It's on Houston and Norfolk.
Yeah, I know exactly what it is. Gaia?
Gaia.
Great.
It's just fantastic. Their hours are kind of funny, but it's just one of those places. We just kind of ran into it one night when we were like walking around the city and we were really hungry and we're like, oh, what are we going to do? And then there it was, and she was just she's one of those, she's a real character. She can be a little brusque, but she's totally cool. And
who? You mean the owner?
Gaia.
Oh, it's a person. Gaia. Okay.
And but it's just great. It's kind of one of my favorite spots.
I'll go there. I'll tell them I came all the way from Tampa to get this.
Yeah, hopefully that will work. It's totally worth going. There's also there's this place up in Williamsburg in Brooklyn called Okonomi, which does like traditional style Japanese breakfast.
Oh, that sounds cool.
And it's like the best. I think it's maybe the best I've ever felt walking away from a meal.
Wow.
Yeah. Just like, I mean, even just like the rice, it's like a bowl of rice, and it's like the best. I mean, it's more than a bowl of rice, but it's just the bowl of rice is like the best rice you've ever had. You know, just everything about it, and like the little assortment of pickles, and just like the whole deal. It's just so fantastic, and it just feels like it's really nourishing you. It's not just like filling you up; it's like nourishing you.
Dude, I'm starving now after listening to all this.
Yeah. There's so many good places, but yeah, those are kind of in my top.
Very cool. Thank you.
For sure.
And last question, man. And I can't tell you, man, it's really been a pleasure talking to you, getting to know you. You're such a class guy, man. You're awesome. Anytime I can help you, you just reach out and let me know. Last 10 years, what's been the biggest change, or maybe 7 or 8 years, because you're still young. What's been the biggest change in your personality over the last 7 or 8 years, and how much of this change has been deliberate, intentional, and how much is just a natural part of aging?
Wow, that's interesting. Biggest change. It's interesting. I mean, I think there's been some stuff that could be a result of having moved to New York, and like how that's maybe just changed some things about me a little bit. I moved, I guess, like 5.5 years ago. So it's definitely in that realm time-wise. But I think, well, I'll tell you one thing. This isn't so much like personality, but I've definitely become more politically engaged since I moved here.
Yeah, that's easy to do.
Yeah. Just, living around different different kinds of people has been, it's really had an effect. And you just, you see that engagement a lot more, I think, being here. And everybody's out, in the world, and, so, and I've also traveled more to other parts of the world too. So that's kind of just forced me to be more engaged, and it's caused me to be more interested in what's going on in the world, the wider world, politically as well. And then, of course, the United States has a new, disappointing relationship with the rest of the world. Sorry, I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, I hear you.
But so anyway, but that's definitely a change that's taken place. And but in terms of like personality, I think I've just like maybe become a little more comfortable in my own skin in the last handful of years.
That's awesome.
Just maybe like I mean, I think in some ways musically, like I've definitely come more into my own as far as what I sound like and what I play like.
Finding your voice, sort of.
Yeah, being more comfortable with like this is my sound rather than like this is my derivative version of somebody else's sound.
Yeah.
And I think too, just hand in hand with that is a little bit more of like just knowing, okay, well, this is what I know I can do comfortably, and this is what what I know I am going to struggle more with, and that kind of affects like how I feel when I show up to a gig, maybe, or if I show up to a rehearsal with people I never met before, or also just how I deal with business, how I, the way I communicate, and that kind of thing. I think it's just, like I say, part of it is just kind of getting older, and I've also been in therapy for a number of years, and I think that's really helped a lot.
Oh man, that helps. Yeah, that helps infinitely. Yeah.
In fact, I believe I saw on your list there, one of the questions was like, what's the best money you ever spent?
Yeah. That was one. Yeah. What's the best? Yeah. Is that one? Therapy? Your therapy? Yeah. 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 That's good value if you got the right person, for sure, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, it's like, it's certainly can, it might take time to find the right person or whatever. And it's like, it's an investment, because it's not, it's not cheap. And it's certainly, like everything, it's not cheap in New York, but I found that to be one of the greatest things I've ever done for myself.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not something you're going to fix in a day because it took 20, 30 years, whatever, that period of time is to get there. It's going to take a little bit to unwind it, but it's very unwindable if you want to, whatever it is you're trying to unwind or rewind or whatever, or wind tight or whatever, it's definitely whatever you want. It's definitely doable.
Yeah. And like, I think part of it too is just what I've realized is, it's almost more, it's not so much that I'm like changing anything about myself as I am like having more awareness of what happens. And then there's like some freedom in that. And that can apply so much to music too, where it's just like, man, a big thing that I talk about, like when I'm teaching, is like the difference between if you go see a musician and you're usually probably really impressed by what's projecting out of them, right? Like, because you're watching them, you're hearing them, and that's what touches you. It's like, it's what's coming out. And like, but for me, the people that I find that I like the most musically, it seems to be more about like what they're taking in, And so I find it's like the path of like getting better with music for me, I'm finding is like less about compiling more and more information or like taking in more, like adding to the pile of knowledge of like, okay, more
YouTube videos.
Yeah, right. Like in some ways that can just be like a diversion almost, like, well, you just got to get at this thing and like, watch this other video and then I'll have my key. But it's really about just becoming a better listener. Like that's the main thing. Like, have you ever heard this band Vesen from Sweden?
No.
Oh, they're wonderful. Vasen. They're like this really great instrumental trio from Sweden. And their guitar player, Roger, once said to me, you should talk more than you listen. And that's why you have 2 ears and only one mouth. I mean, sorry, you should listen more.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know what? That's I've been in sales 30 years, and I've trained loads of people. And even my wife, when she started, doing her own thing, I was like, hey, she says, I'm not going to be a good salesperson because I can't talk. And I'm like, you got to listen. That's
right.
Don't worry about talking. If you just listen, you just ask them questions and then just shut up and listen, and you're great.
Man, and I find that to be the same thing with music. Like the main, when people come for lessons, like the main thing that I, across the board, seem to identify as like, we just need to work on our listening. And it means like because that obviously that like reflects in like what you're hearing of your own playing that you might be missing, like maybe I'm not really hearing that I'm a little out of time, or I tend to rush, or like I'm not maybe hearing that whatever, that I'm like playing stuff that's like not correct over this harmony, or also like I'm not really like listening to the people I'm playing with to make sure that I'm staying in time and like really grooving. It's like, it's almost like always comes down to listening.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
And like, both like listening to yourself and like listening to what's going on around you, and man, like if you have good ears or you were really working on your ears, man, that we have access to so many recordings. You can learn from like all the masters,
Absolutely.
Just put on like a John Coltrane record and just, okay, what's he doing? All you got to do is just like keep listening, and you'll learn,
Yeah, that was impressive that you listened to enough Coltrane solos to pick up that rhythmic thing that he does at the end there. I was pretty impressed with that.
Well, I mean, it's a language thing, just like, man, like a lot of blues guitar players will do that little tail, like that.
Yeah.
That little whoop.
But that makes a big difference.
It makes a big difference. It's like a little idiomatic thing. Or like, man, Ray Charles does the same thing in his singing. If you notice, like he'll sing at the end of a word, he'll come down and then he'll often come back up. Like Georgia, like that same thing where he kind of comes back at the end of the word.
Yeah.
It's like becomes this little, you kind of catch these little idiomatic things. Like, yeah, man. I mean, everything is listening. It's funny because it's like I say, it's all about like really what you're taking in. It's like what are you open to like allow to come through the the filter or something.
Awesome, man. This has been really, really fun, man. I appreciate everything. And I want to tell people where to find you and how to get tuned into you. So it's Grant Gordy, Grant, GrantGordy.com. And his touring schedule's on there. He's going to be all over Italy really soon. And he's got a lot of cool stuff going on. Grant also gives lessons, man. So if you are somebody that likes to play jazz and or likes to play bluegrass and or is hip to the concept of listening to open your mind and be a better player, definitely hit up Grant. Check him. You can hit him up either on his, I think on his website, grantgordy.com. He's got a tab there for lessons and you can email him. Man, again, do you want to talk about Mr. Sun?
I would love to. Yeah. Mr. Sun is, it's a band that really just came about because of our mutual friendship. I was like, before I lived on the East Coast, I was coming out to work some with my good friend Joe K. Walsh, who I've known for a long time, and he had already been connected with Darol Anger, the fiddler, for a number of years. And I think Joe ended up just booking us a gig at a festival one time, and that was with
like unrehearsed and everything.
Well, we maybe did like a rehearsed for that gig, maybe like put something together like the day of or something.
That's cool.
It was pretty loose, and then we started with a wonderful bassist named Carl Doty, who was living in Boston at the time, and he was really busy with his own stuff, and then we eventually hired a young bassist named Ethan Yojevitz, who now lives in Nashville. And he's been working with Sierra Hole, and he's now playing with the Milk Carton Kids. He's been on the road with them for a little while. And yeah, Ethan moved to Nashville, and now we've been working with this guy, Aidan O'Donnell, this wonderful guy who lives about a mile and a half from me here in Brooklyn.
That's awesome.
So I work with him quite a lot. But we made our first record a couple years ago on Compass Records called The People Need Light, and then
that's a great title, Mr. Sun, The People Need Light. Oh, that's very cool, man.
Pretty happy with how that came out. And then and we have our second record is in the can. I don't exactly know when it's coming out yet, but we're still kind of finishing up mixing and working on all that stuff. And that band is really cool and joyful because it's an interesting mixture of people because we all revere Darol so much. He's kind of he's older generation, and he's a guy that certainly Joe and I like grew up listening to him. Obviously he was in the David Grisman Quintet, so we listened. I listened to him all the time growing up, and listened to his other projects and stuff. And on one hand we kind of have this reverence for him, but at the same time it's also like a very democratic group. Where everybody's bringing in material, like everybody writes for the band and everybody like arranges and and then when we play together there's this wonderful kind of chemistry that happens where it's very conversational music. Like things can kind of turn on a dime, things like there's always this kind of constant interaction. It's just like a conversation. Like Darol puts it really wonderfully. He said, music is the only time where you can have a conversation and everybody's talking all at once.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's just like,
Do you have a title for the next LP?
We don't have a title yet, as far as I'm aware.
We should make some, like, Here Comes the Sun. I mean, there's a lot of good things you could do here, man.
Dark Side of the Sun.
Dark Side of the Sun. The people need light. The people need more light. I mean, this.
People need more light.
Yeah, the people need more light.
People need still more light.
That's like 5-minute abs, no 4-minute abs.
That's right. Yeah, more than ever, the people need light.
Yeah, now more than ever, the people need light. Yeah, I like.
So anyway, that's that. Just kind of keep your eyes out. It'll come out.
Is that going to be on your webpage or on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm sure
Okay.
we'll be blasting all about that.
Great. And like I said, you're more than welcome to come on here. I think it'll help you, man. Happy to talk about it. All right, man. Well, Grant, thanks for everything. You're awesome. And
thank you so much, Craig.
Yeah. Likewise. Very much so. Very much so. Everybody, please check out Grant Gordy. He's an awesome guy, as you hear, but he's a fantastic player. He's got a lot of soul, a lot of passion, a really hard-working guy. And what a good story, man. This guy went from, moving all around the place, not even graduating high school, to being sharp as a whip, using SAT words every other freaking sentence, and playing with his heroes, and playing and headlining in places where he went to see people when he was a kid. So thank you for sharing all that awesome story, man.
Pleasure.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thanks again to Grant Gordy for spending time with us. Check out Grant online. It's grantgordy.com. And make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com and sign up to get on our newsletter list right now. And remember, most important, happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.